what you describe is probably true, but I think what it has happened in Europe is that we have not invested at the same level than other countries, especially China, in a number of things that help basically to improve competitiveness. Starting with,
if someone wants to start business in Asia, would you suggest to do it right now?
If you are in Europe, definitely consider Asia. It's probably one of the few places in the world where you can still see growth.
Let's begin.
Perfect. Let's go for it.
I'm Philip, and today with me we have Iñaki Amate.
Thank you very much, Philip, for having me here today.
Iñaki, perhaps before we start, for all those who have not had a chance to meet you, could you say a few words about who you are and what you do?
No, thank you very much, Philip. I'm originally from Spain. I came to Hong Kong after having lived more or less around 20 years in Finland, and I spent now the last 9 years here in Hong Kong. I've been a consultant for most of my professional life, so from almost the late 90s, and I've been most recently I'm the partner that is dedicated to our innovation and experience design across Asia Pacific at EY. I'm also the chairman of the European Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, something that I've been doing for quite a bit with different roles in different chambers. And I am also the founder of an investment syndicate for business angels globally, but based here in Hong Kong.
That's quite a story. Yo hablo un poquito español.
Well, muy bien. Perfect.
So that's quite a few hats that you are wearing in Hong Kong. Which one is your favorite?
The favorite is probably being I didn't mention this, but I'm the father of 2 kids, and which are already grown-ups. But I think my favorite one is still my family and spending time with them. From those that are more professional, I think each one of them brings a different intellectually rewarding and challenging part to my life, and that's why I really like them almost equally, the 3 of them.
You like them equally, but is there any of them that you would spend more time on or that is more demanding?
Of course, with my work at EY, that's the one, that's the priority, and that's where I spend most of the time. But the others are more like, they have been like complementing and almost like hobbies, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you are the chairman of the European Chamber of Commerce, which makes you a leader. How would you describe your leadership style?
I'm the kind of person that is quite relaxed with the team around me. So I delegate significantly to everyone that works in my teams. I entrust people mostly because I pick up people that I know that they are really good at what they are supposed to be really good at what they are supposed to do. And I tend to be a person that trusts people. So after so many years in Finland, and that's one of the main values in that culture, you learn to trust and you learn to people really take advantage of the opportunities that you put in front of them. So through my professional life, that's one of the things that I've been doing mostly, which is trusting people to do not only what they are supposed to do, but even to go beyond that, actually to promote them and to give them the chance to really go beyond. I think that's probably one of the main characteristics. I think the other one is that I like to envision a lot what the future might look like. And I like to, by delegating a lot of the day-to-day work, I can focus a bit more on the biggest pictures in each one of the steps that I had in my professional career. And that's something that I have passion for. So really looking into beyond what you have in front of you, what else is lying behind.
I like a few concepts that you just mentioned, particularly culture and trust. Now I have a challenge. I heard the word trust does not exist in the business dictionary.
It's probably something that I don't agree with. I think that relationships are many times in the personal level also based on trust, according to my philosophy. So if you want to really grow over time, relationships in business and in personal life, it's going to be very difficult if you cannot trust that person. And I understand that in different parts of the world, trust is something that you need to earn over time through actions. But my experience is that, I mean, if you start by allowing people to, have an open conversation, an open discussion, an open trusted relationship from the very beginning, then it's for them to really take it to the next level or to break it. If they take advantage of it very quickly, then that relationship is not going to evolve. And then you will learn a lesson, and then you probably will say, well, why did I trust this person? Why did I trust in the first place? Which is a problem, of course. But I am of the opinion that it's better to start by trusting cautiously, but trusting, and then moving from there.
Trust with limits.
Yeah, I guess, yes. Especially you need to understand the environment and the context where you are moving, but I mean, definitely, yeah.
Now, to the culture. We obviously live in the culture which was not ours when we arrived here. We had to learn. Do you see differences between doing business in Europe or the United States and here in Asia?
Oh, absolutely, very, very different. I think there are so many elements of it that one could write a book. But I do think that for me, again, being from Spain, having moved to Finland, they are already very different cultures. Then moving to Hong Kong is yet another big step into seeing those differences. But to name a few, I mean, trust is already one of the very obvious ones that we just started to discuss. I mean, here, like I said, I mean, you need to earn trust over the years. Very similar to Spain and to the Mediterranean countries. In Finland, Scandinavian is more a given that you basically operate in. But the other one is probably also because the trust, I think, is a lot about to do with the concentration of power and the delegation of power. I think in Scandinavia, you find organizations that tend to be very flat, but they are flat because people are empowered already at that very low level or very junior level. They are already empowered to make decisions. They are taught to think by themselves and to make decisions based on the knowledge that they have accumulated. And because they have the trust, then they are able to do that. Here, you need to have a lot more, you have to earn the experience over the years, and typically it's a lot more hierarchical, the way that you basically encounter the way decisions are made in the organizations.
So, as an action step or a hint to our audience, how do you gain trust in Asia?
I think you gain trust by a lot of collaboration, a lot of spending time together through different engagements, through different situations, both in business and sometimes in personal life, and eventually is through time. But compared to, let's say, Scandinavians, in Scandinavia, the assumption is that, I mean, you can trust the person that you have in front of you. So you know that what is going to be told you is going to be something that is going to be honored, and therefore you don't need to worry beyond what is basically agreed and written. And from there, you can just start operating.
I brought a book here. It says, "Design is storytelling." Do you know why I brought it?
Maybe because you want to talk about design.
And because, other than business, your background is also design. So do you agree that design is storytelling?
Yeah, definitely. Design is still not that well understood, but design is pretty much a way to do problem solving. So it's a way to actually find solutions for problems that could be from very complex and abstract, like designing a new digital bank, to something more tangible, like designing a table or a sofa lounge. And the process, the methods are very similar for resolving for something really complex or a little bit more simple. You need to understand for whom who is the audience. Then you need to think a little bit about, what are the elements that you have at hand, the requirements, and then with that, you can start like creating ideas, concepts that you basically sketch, and then you validate by creating first low fidelity prototypes and then high fidelity that you basically are gonna decide based on the results whether you want to launch or not. But at the end of the day, you need to be able to tell a story of what is that you are trying to achieve. You need to tell the story to the audience for whom you are going to be designing, and you need to tell the story for what is that you are going to get in the end, so that you convince people in the process that what you are coming up with is going to be something that it fits their needs.
And in this part of the world, like Hong Kong, Asia, do you tell different stories when you work with your clients?
Well, there are different audiences, there are different cultures, so you need to take those into consideration because otherwise it would be irrelevant. So yes, definitely, you always need to adapt to whoever is the audience.
I wonder, what is the innovation that you are most excited about? Because you tell the stories, you consult, you design, you need to be up on the lookout for new technology.
Well, I mean, the buzzword these days is definitely AI. And it's not just because it's something that we find useful in order to sell consulting services. It is a buzzword because it's really, truly disruptive and it's going to impact everything around us. But why I find it interesting is because like I told you before, I like to basically look into what the future might look like. I like to speculate potential scenarios of what it might look like. And today you have a wide range of what AI might actually bring to society in the next 10, 20 years. You have from the really apocalyptic ones to those that are more realistic and oversimplifying. But at the end of the day, I think it's quite disruptive in its own, and you need to really think about how it's going to impact, starting with yourself, what is going to impact in your day-to-day life, in your profession, and eventually start moving from there, thinking a little bit about how do you want to be prepared for it. And if you start with yourself and then you start moving forward into the environment you live in, your profession, your company, your ecosystem, you will find out that the moment you start looking at the advancements and the speed, the acceleration that it has, it makes you realize that you need to keep pace with it. And it's very difficult because it is coming up, every single day there is something new. I think there is obviously the obvious improving of efficiency and productivity that everybody is talking about. There is definitely also the risk side, which is, if the good people in the world are using this to basically create better tools that helps us to free some of our time to do other things, But then there is a potential negative use of AI to take advantage of the rest of us. And I think understanding that is also very, very important, and how you can prevent from that misuse and how do you prepare for it is something that everyone should actually spend a little bit of time to think a little bit nowadays. And then eventually it's going to generate a number of changes around us. We will probably see more and more cyber delinquency in the future, cyber attacks. We will probably see more companies specializing in delivering services of cybersecurity to prevent for those to happen. And obviously, we will see efficiencies coming in things that we haven't even imagined today. I think I was watching this last weekend, the launch of the new Tesla products, and you could see there the robots already articulating and interacting with a level of humanity that it has been difficult to see until now. So as a designer, it's actually creating quite a lot of interesting challenges because we start thinking about how are we going to be able to embrace what this technology brings to us, but how do we design for behaviors. So if we need to start designing now something that is going to have a lot more power to interact with others, how do we make sure that we design different tonalities of personalities in those artifacts that are going to use the power of AI to interact with users? And how do you make sure that they are adjusted to the culture, to the different moment of life that that person is basically going through? That's what creates unique customer experiences or user experiences, which is, at the end of the day, what designers in my field are we looking into improving constantly.
You mentioned acceleration. There is a term, accelerated innovation. It refers to the Chinese way of innovation, which means they develop things parallelly, contrary to what is done in the Western culture, where they develop sequentially. Do you think this still holds true? And I am asking this question mainly because I hear voices that Europe and the United States are starting to fall behind the innovation that is taking place in China.
Yeah. Just recently, there was a very interesting paper presented by a former member of the European Union Commission, Mr. Draghi. And that talks a lot about this topic. It talks about the need for improving productivity in the European Union to make sure that we remain relevant in a world where more and more we are going to see different clusters of countries that are competing for the same markets, right? I think in the case of Europe, what you describe is probably true, but I think what it has happened in Europe is that we have not invested at the same level than other countries, especially China, in a number of things that help basically to improve competitiveness, starting with education. I think education, if we want to remain competitive, we need to understand that in Asia, they take education a lot more like a preparation for competition, where in Europe, I think we have forgotten that education could be the platform for actually giving you an edge. I think that in some countries, obviously, it varies a lot, but in Scandinavia, it's very true that they actually educate you to become a person, a grown-up person that can actually make decisions in life, that is balanced. In other markets, in other parts of Europe, probably that's a little bit less. And I think what has happened is also that when you have the requirements and the investments going for education go down, and I think a lot of the countries have actually decided to save in that particular aspect, that has a direct impact also in the output. The next would be probably investments into R&D, both in the academic world, in the private sector, and the public sector. Again, I don't think the European standard is at the level that you find right now in China. And I think that's why the Draghi report is an eye-opener for everyone. If Europe wants to have a role to play, there will need to be a big shift, paradigm shift in Europe. And that includes the way that you're going to be able to finance this, which opens a completely different dimension to the way that Europe has been operating in the last decades.
It is a bit tricky though, isn't it? China is like a whole entity and Europe is like countries.
That's right. And that's why I think it's challenging, because the change in paradigm, it means also that there has to be a lot more agreement and agreement on what is that vision that we want to achieve. And that once you agree on that, you probably cannot touch that for a few decades. And that's something that is a little bit controversial in a union where you have countries where the political system forces basically changes every 4 years. And you might have a government that at a given moment that decides that they are not necessarily aligned or in agreement with what it was decided like 10 years ago. But I think that if the only way forward is to have a little bit of forward thinking and envisioning that that's probably what is required from all of us on the benefit of not only just us, but also the future generations.
So it seems to me that China has this long-term planning strategy, while Europe wants to, but can't really achieve it.
Yes, I think mostly because the political model, I agree, that's a little bit the challenge. But I think that Europe can, and the European Union, the European Commission can probably set up long-term plans that then, if ratified by everyone, then could probably be similar to those policies that the Chinese government is putting forward. It's just that when is the right timing for it? In a moment where you have countries that have political situations where parties in power are not necessarily thinking long term, and they are more thinking about short term. What is that helps them to really retain power? I think that's when it becomes a little bit challenging.
Well, perhaps some of the advisors or even people in power are watching this podcast, and then they could draw some conclusions from what you are saying. Now, moving a little bit away from the macro perspective towards the micro perspective for people who do business. If someone wants to start business in Asia, would you suggest to do it right now, or should they stay in Europe or North America where they feel comfortable?
So I'm a very big fan of internationalization, among other things because it helps you to diversify. And in my professional life, in the last 25, 30 years, we have seen so many different crises, sometimes localized in specific countries or markets, that if you were a little bit diversified, it helped you to go through those challenges in a better position than if you were not. So for me, the advice would be definitely consider, if you are in Europe, definitely consider Asia. It's probably one of the few places in the world where you can still see growth, where you have still like a significant part of the population that is going to grow from a certain level to the next level in terms of GDP. And then be conscious that, you need to do that without betting all the eggs into a single market or the whole region. I think one of the lessons from the last 5 to 10 years is that you might want to actually diversify your production centers, your value chain, the ecosystem you depend in, just to make sure that you are not caught into a trade war or into a situation where something happens like COVID and then all your production is stuck into a single place, right?
You've been in consulting for quite a while, and there are a lot of young people dreaming about doing what you do. What would be an unpopular opinion about the industry that you might want to share with us and others would disagree?
Well, I think the consulting industry is still very unpopular among certain public because it's perceived as, we pay too little to young people coming into the industry, that they need to work long hours. I think the last years there has been a significant change, and there's a lot more awareness about the well-being of employees generally around the world, and of course the consulting industry has taken that very seriously. And the reality is that it's on each one of us that work there as leaders to make sure that we show with example that there is no need to go beyond and to be abused or get abused by the system. I think that we can set an example of, number one, managing on the one side clients' expectations around what is feasible within a reasonable time frame, and then obviously with our teams to understand what is the required on their side in order to achieve it, and if it's difficult or challenging, to facilitate and make possible for them to either by adding resources or negotiating with the client. But that's something that, there is a lot more awareness right now than it was when I started in the.
You are suggesting then that we could reduce the number of hours that people work.
It can be, but it is a lot lower than what it was already 20 years ago.
But then there is this constant battle between the European or the North American and the Asian culture, working culture, where if you look at Japan, Korea, China, Hong Kong, they work a lot. They put so much time and effort into anything they do. Contrary to what in the Western world, we are trying to minimize the effort, so to speak. Does it bring our competitiveness down?
No, definitely. But a lot of that is going to change a bit now with the introduction of Gen AI tools that help you to accelerate or focus on more deep type of work instead of the more superficial type of work. And I think that's what we all aspire towards, right? We aspire to spend more time into creating value with our experience and knowledge than with doing PowerPoints constantly, repeating the same content.
Then how do you stay ahead of others?
So number one is I talk to lots of people. But I talk to all kinds of people. So I spend quite a bit of time talking to the most junior members of my team to understand, what is the latest on 3D printing or what kind of tools they've been using for composing music. And then also with people from the academic world to understand a little bit how they see perspectives on geopolitics, or obviously very senior executives and owners of businesses to understand what are the challenges that they see, and lastly, of course, with people from the public services and the government. I think that they give you a perspective of, we tend to formulate very quickly opinions about why there are problems that we see every day, and unless you speak with the people that have to deal with them, you don't understand why they are hard to resolve. So I think it's important to have this holistic picture. So that's the first thing. The second one is that I read a lot, and I read a lot of different newspapers, journals, and then of course, listen to very good podcasts like yours, and try to keep myself up to speed with what's going around us.
What filters do you use to see through the information?
I think it's a combination of, obviously, when talking to people, they tend to recommend you things that they have found out that might be interesting for them. So that's one of my first filters. Secondly, over the years, I tend to select a few journals or media outlets that I trust. They give different perspectives from the same domain or the same geography, so that you basically get a bit of a feeling from different views, and then you are able to formulate a little bit of your own. So I think it's very important to do that, because otherwise today you could get very quickly just a very polarized view.
We all develop as people. Is there anything in the past that you had an opinion of, and then you completely changed this opinion? Like as if saying to yourself, I wish I knew that 10 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that for me, one of the most interesting things is that I don't think I ever saw myself here today doing what I'm doing. And probably my advice to everyone would be that keep searching for what is that you want to do. And if you ever get stuck, if you ever get to a point where you don't learn anymore, just look into find a new passion. Just look into doing something else. Pivot. Sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable, but uncomfortable is good. I think it's important to be able to put yourself in those uncomfortable moments very regularly, actually. I think for me, it might be like taking a cold shower or like going up a mountain every now and then, if not almost every day. But then those uncomfortable moments makes you a little bit more agile for change, which is absolutely necessary. So probably the lesson that we all aspire to get into a comfortable position. So we work very hard so that we can get home and we can sit in the sofa and then or find or buy that ideal place where we can basically think about retiring. I think probably the lesson is that you probably want to find yourself into a situation where you are happy with that constant change and that level of semi or uncomfort in your life.
There are hundreds of books written on happiness. For you, your approach is change and challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially when you spend a bit more time than just visiting. But I mean, already from the first time I came here pretty much backpacking with my then girlfriend, now my wife. And it was Hong Kong. I think Hong Kong was one of those first places we passed through. And I remember thinking and telling them, my wife Tanya, that this is an amazing place. I hope one day I can come and work here. And this was in the late 90s. And then obviously, when the opportunity came, it was like a dream come true. We can actually achieve that vision. So, but then the moment you come here, you start understanding a lot more in depth about what we discussed before. I mean, what makes this place, the people, the fantastic amount of diversity, and the how welcoming the local population is, and how hard workers they are. I think that was very life-changing.
What is something that is not on your LinkedIn profile, but has played a huge role in your success?
My wife. I don't mention her in my profile, but I wouldn't be here without her. And I think it sounds a little bit, quiche or whatever you want to say, but she is the kind of person that sometimes forces me to, go one extra mile, one extra step, one professionally to embrace discomfort, and that's something that I admire a lot, because she was the one that helped me to make the decision to move from a very comfortable executive role to a startup mode with my colleagues from Fjord when we started the business, and it was a moment in our life where you could argue, well, why would you do it? And it was the right decision. So she is the kind of person that makes me realize that yes, you should not stay happy with your lazy established position and go and push harder.
Would you say you are a risk taker or risk averse?
So it depends. I think in general, I'm a bit conservative when it comes to really take risky decisions. But at the same time, I realized that a lot of what has defined my professional life was because at some point I made decisions that were not necessarily the obvious or easiest ones, like deciding to go international and start opening in a market where we had no experience. I think those were relatively low risk, but still would not have been the natural way for most of the companies that were competing against me in those, or against us in those days. I think that's where probably made the difference between us and the rest.
From the business perspective, what are the biggest challenges that we face when entering the market?
So I think there are a number of them, actually. The first one is that the level of sophistication in understanding something like design is not so high in Asia. And it's a historical and cultural reason. I mean, the fact is that when you go to Scandinavia, and use Scandinavia a lot as an example, but in Scandinavia, the kids learn the basics of design, which is around aesthetics and functionality and history of what makes a good product and how you basically need to focus in detail and the craft. They learn from the kindergarten, right? The understanding and the embracing of natural and nature products, the simplicity, all that is something that you basically grow with. And you learn a lot about art and the history of art. So basically how you basically have evolved certain parts of the art through the craft and the evolution of different trends. I think in Asia that is culturally and historically is different. Simply is different, and that has not been educated, and therefore it doesn't represent some of the foundations and values of the community and society. I have a friend that was explaining me the other day that, I mean, when you have been living in a place like Milan, and then you go to work every day and you're just like surrounded by beauty constantly around you, these unbelievable, beautiful architectural buildings, and in the end, it becomes part of your DNA. It becomes part of your way, the way you basically start looking at the world, and beauty becomes one of the dimensions that you use in order to assess, evaluate, and consider everything around you. So that appreciation is something that is very difficult to have when you have not been exposed to it, and that's why I think it's important to. For companies that come and try to start introducing the concepts of design, the concepts of appreciation for functionality and aesthetics, to explain that it's not as simple as just copying a beautiful product and trying to make it as close as possible to the original one, because in the process you are still missing quite a lot. You are missing the understanding of how the designer got to that particular product in the end. And the process of not only creating the product, which actually might take like months before you get to that final product, but actually took years for the designer to connect all these neurons with all this different knowledge that he has accumulated to get to that particular product. So how much do you pay for that product? It's actually it's a formula that takes into consideration all of these different elements. When you basically copy it, you are basically saying, well, I don't really need that. I can actually skip all that and then get straight into the final answer. But that doesn't guarantee that you will basically be able to generate by yourself something similar. And I think that's a little bit what is happening today to China. China is finally evolving and is starting to realize that they have developed such an amazing, sophisticated technology in the way that they produce that they can start like creating by themselves. But in order to create, they need to be able to go through that process of imagining and defining and designing their own products and services. And if they don't have that knowledge, years of accumulation that leads towards a well-defined craft and process to create new products and services, and a good pool of talented senior designers that helps you to create them, is going to be very difficult. So I think what we are going through right now is a process where China starts to awake to the realization that they probably need to get more better design, and that's a combination of bringing people from outside. It's a combination of buying services, and it's a combination of educating people into the history and into the craft. So eventually, they will be able to do products and services of the level of quality that everybody is expecting. And we're starting to see that now with electric vehicles.
Oh, they are amazing.
They are unbelievable, right? And I think it's very easy to expect that, I mean, that could actually start happening with other product lines and other industries. And the next thing will be also how to brand and to launch global brands, which is something that they have not really much experience beyond a few sectors, like the technology and maybe now in the electric vehicles. So I think that I foresee that a little bit. That is going to be the next step in the Chinese evolution in the way that they are moving forward in the value chain.
I just saw Dongfeng showcasing the new electric vehicle in Litung Avenue here in Hong Kong. Incredible.
Yes. Yeah.
And actually, what you just said, it reminds me of this movie, Devil Wears Prada, where she was explaining the origins of blue color as the color of the sweater.
Exactly. There's so much behind every decision that sometimes designers have to make. That when the product is exceptional, you actually it makes a difference.
It is quite interesting to see your opinion that more and more Chinese products will hit higher standards in terms of design.
Yes, I think so, because I have friends working in some of the most respected automotive design studios in Italy. The majority, if not 80 to 90% of the work that they do is actually for Chinese manufacturers. Eventually, what will happen is that a lot of these people will educate people in China, or they will move to China, and eventually they will start realizing that that's where the design is coming from. I also think that, I mean, this offers an opportunity for Chinese companies and brands to change a little bit of the perception and mentality that China is taking away jobs, if they understand that by investing into those companies in Europe or the rest of the world, by either investing in buying them or financing them or opening their own factories in those markets, they keep jobs in countries in the European Union. Those workers will understand that they are not removed from China, but on top of that, they are actually consumers that eventually China needs for all the extra products that they need to sell abroad.
So what you are saying is that, in a way, the European governments do not understand China, or do you think they actually do know what they are doing?
It's a very good point. I think that the last 4 years have been pretty bad for the image of Hong Kong and China in Europe. And I think first the demonstrations, then the COVID didn't really help much. But the media has just been amplifying, the negativeness of the situation. Hong Kong is a very vibrant city. It has changed a lot in the last years, as we have seen. There is a lot less foreign labor force than that it used to be, particularly from Europe. But the European mindset at the moment is elsewhere. I think the Europeans, they don't really think of Hong Kong anymore as what it used to be, which was like this interface to deal with China. That has disappeared. I think the perception in Europe is that if you want to deal with China, you need to go directly to China and only to discuss big issues. On top of that, for corporations and private sector, China has become a challenge, a problem, because they don't know how to deal anymore with it, and the big picture of how do you deal China versus the US and other markets, and how do you prepare in case of something worse happens again. So, and I think those that we operate here, that we are in China and Hong Kong, we have a hard time to go back to Europe and explain that, first of all, what is the reality, which is very different from the distortion or the distorted image that they get from the media. And secondly, from explain them that there's still a relevant point around being present here if you want to get access to this part of the world. If you want to, like we were discussing before, diversify and get access to markets that they still offer the possibility to grow.
So you mentioned design was the first obstacle.
The sophistication, understanding design, yes.
What would be the other?
I think the other one would be about the fact that, if you want to establish yourself and grow into this part of the world, like we explained before, it takes time to build trust through the relationships that you start building. So when we were growing Fjord a few years ago, we consciously avoided to come to Asia. Or we did, but it was very tactical, a project here and there in Korea, a project in China. But we didn't really go as far as establishing or setting up because we understood that it would be a lot significant investment into going, completely greenfield and open an office here to establish a business. Instead, it became very clear that it would be a lot easier to either go with somebody that has already a well-established network and then top it or go on top of it to take advantage of it. So I think that probably would be my advice. That if you want to come to Asia and you want to accelerate, really consider to do it with somebody else that is already established. A local partner, an acquisition, or yeah.
Inaki, it has been a tremendous pleasure to listen to you sharing your experience and perspectives. You encourage to be curious and to learn more. You give fantastic perspective on Asia versus Europe in terms of education, business, strategy. You caught my interest and had my attention for the entire interview, and I believe that goes with the audience as well. Thank you so much, and I hope I will see you here again.
Thank you.